Hi, yeah, I'd said into the phone. I need a quote for installing some acoustic foam panels. Maybe some mass-loaded vinyl? Sure thing, the contractor replied amiably. Studio? Home theater? Chicken coop, actually. Silence. Then, you want to soundproof a chicken coop? Well, more like manage the resonance. Enhance the projection in one direction, perhaps, for my singing rooster. A long, heavy pause. Buddy, the contractor finally said, his voice filled with bewildered pity. I install soundproofing. I think you need, like a therapist, or maybe an exorcist. Click. It all started peacefully enough. A neat little house in Pleasant Valley Estates. The name alone should have been a warning sign. A decent-sized backyard, and my 3 girls, Henrietta, Beatrice, and Clucky. They weren't just chickens, they were therapy. After a long day dealing with TPS reports and corporate jargon, coming home to their gentle clucking, watching them scratch around their neat little run, collecting a couple of fresh, warm eggs for breakfast. It was grounding, pastoral even, and they were quiet. Seriously, my neighbor Henderson's beagle mix made more noise chasing squirrels. My other neighbor's teenage son's garage band practice, if you could call that noise practice, rattled windows 3 streets away. My girls? Just soft clucks and the occasional contented murmur. They stayed in their enclosed run, didn't smell. I kept it immaculate, cedar chips, regular cleaning, the works, and provided delicious organic eggs. What wasn't to love? Apparently, Mrs. Kravitz, 2 doors down, found plenty not to love. Agnes Kravitz, whose primary hobby seemed to be monitoring the neighborhood with binoculars from her lace-curtained window and reporting infractions to the HOA board, on which she naturally held a prominent position, Secretary of Perpetual Grievances, I think. One sunny Tuesday afternoon, as I was happily collecting 2 perfect brown eggs, her voice cut through the air like a serrated knife. Kevin, are those chickens I see?" She was peering over the fence line, her face pinched as if smelling sour milk. "Hi, Agnes," I said cheerfully, holding up the eggs. "Yeah, Henrietta and Beatrice were productive today. Want one?" "Absolutely not," she snapped. "This is a residential neighborhood, Kevin, not some backwoods farm. Those creatures are unsanitary. They attract vermin. They lower property values. They are livestock. Agnes, they're cleaner than your prize-winning Persian cat that keeps digging up my petunias," I countered, maybe a little too sharply. "And they're contained." "They are prohibited," she declared. "Bylaw 15, Section 3, no livestock. I'm reporting this to the board immediately." And she spun around, marching back towards her house, mission accomplished. Sure enough, 2 days later, the dreaded cream-colored envelope arrived. Official HOA letterhead. Impersonal, threatening font. "Dear Mr. Sloan," it began, "it has come to the attention of the Pleasant Valley Estates HOA Board, following neighbor complaints." I could practically feel Kravitz's glare through the paper. "That poultry, specifically chickens, are being housed on your property at 112 Harmony Lane. Please be advised that as per Bylaw 15, Section 3, Prohibition of Livestock, all forms of poultry are considered livestock and are therefore strictly prohibited within Pleasant Valley Estates. You are hereby directed to remove the prohibited animals from your property within 14 days, to avoid fines and further disciplinary action. Livestock? My sweet, quiet girls? I was furious. The HOA meeting was exactly as soul-crushing as you'd expect, held in the clubhouse basement under flickering fluorescent lights, smelling faintly of chlorine and despair. I presented my case. They were pets, not farm animals. They were quiet, clean, contained. I even brought photos of their neat coop and run, and a petition signed by my immediate neighbors. Henderson was surprisingly okay with them, mainly because they weren't blocking his view of anything. Mrs. Kravitz, clutching a manila folder labeled Poultry Menace, countered with gusto. She spoke darkly of salmonella, avian flu, despite my girls never leaving the yard, the inherent unsightliness of chicken wire, and the terrifying precedent it would set. If we allow chickens today, she warned the board, her voice trembling with dramatic effect, tomorrow it will be goats, then pigs wallowing in our manicured lawns. Where does it end? The board members, mostly retirees, seemingly terrified of Kravitz or just wanting the meeting to end so they could get back to their bridge game, nodded gravely. The HOA president, a man whose personality seemed to have been surgically replaced with beige paint swatches, delivered the verdict. "Kevin," he sighed, adjusting his tie, "we appreciate your passion for your pets. However, the bylaws are explicit. Poultry is included under the definition of livestock. Exceptions cannot be made. The hens must be removed. Defeated, utterly, crushingly defeated. 14 days. I spent them finding a wonderful small farm upstate run by a lovely family who were happy to take Henrietta, Beatrice, and Clucky. Saying goodbye was genuinely tough. As I drove away from the farm, leaving my girls in their new, much larger home, a cold, hard knot of resentment settled in my stomach. They wanted to play hardball. They wanted to enforce the letter of the law, no matter how unreasonable. Fine. They banned my quiet, egg-laying pets. They thought hens were bad? They had no idea. They want poultry? I thought, gripping the steering wheel, a dangerous idea forming. Oh, I'll give them poultry. Poultry with personality. Poultry with presence. Poultry with pipes. My first stop wasn't the pet store. It was the internet, researching rooster breeds. Not for egg-laying potential, obviously. Not for meat, for volume, for stamina, for sheer, unadulterated, window-rattling lung power. Breeds known for frequent, enthusiastic crowing. Breeds that considered 4 a.m. the perfect time for an aria. After careful consideration, cross-referencing dubious online forums with slightly more reputable agricultural sites, I settled on my weapon of choice. I found a local hobby farm selling various breeds, and among them, one particular specimen stood out. He was a magnificent creature, iridescent black and green feathers, a proud scarlet comb, legs like a tiny dinosaur, and an attitude that screamed, "I am the feathered overlord of all I survey." And, according to the farmer, he had a crow that could wake the dead and annoy the neighbors 3 counties over. Perfect. "What's his name?" I asked the farmer. "Don't really name the rooster's son, just call him Loudmouth." "Not any more," I declared. "From this day forward, he shall be known as Luciano. Luciano Pavor, Rooster." The farmer just shrugged, took my money, and handed me the carrier containing my instrument of vengeance. Back home, I settled Luciano into the coop recently vacated by my dear departed hens. I'd spent the week reinforcing it slightly, though my initial thoughts of serious soundproofing had proven problematic. My call to an acoustic contractor had not gone well. "Hi, yeah," I'd said into the phone. "I need a quote for installing some acoustic foam panels. Maybe some mass-loaded vinyl?" "Sure thing," the contractor replied amiably. "Studio? Home theater?" Chicken coop, actually." Silence. Then, "You want to soundproof a chicken coop?" "Well, more like, manage the resonance, enhance the projection in one direction, perhaps, for my singing rooster?" A long, heavy pause. "Buddy," the contractor finally said, his voice filled with bewildered pity, "I install soundproofing. I think you need Like a therapist? Or maybe an exorcist? Click. So, no soundproofing. Luciano would perform au naturel. He didn't wait long to make his debut. The very next morning, precisely 17 minutes before my alarm was set to go off, the first crow ripped through the pre-dawn stillness. It wasn't just loud, it was complex. It started low, built to a shattering crescendo, wobbled slightly off-key, then finished with a flourish that seemed to vibrate the very foundations of the house. I grinned into my pillow. Showtime. Luciano, it turned out, was prolific. He crowed at sunrise. He crowed when the mailman came. He crowed at squirrels. He crowed when a car door slammed 3 streets away. He crowed, I suspected, simply because he could. Predictably, the HOA mailbox began overflowing. Mrs. Kravitz was seen power-walking back and forth in front of my house at all hours, clutching her phone, presumably documenting every single vocalization. The official noise violation notices started arriving, citing Bylaw 22, Section 5. General nuisance, unreasonable noise. My first response was polite denial. Noise? Surely you're mistaken. That's just Luciano's morning practice. This escalated to a phone call with Brenda from the HOA management office, a woman perpetually stressed by neighborhood disputes. Kevin, we're getting multiple complaints daily now, Brenda sighed. Constant rooster crowing. People can't sleep. Mrs. Kravitz claims her delicate teacups are rattling. That's when inspiration, born of pure spite and sleep deprivation, thanks, Luciano, struck gold. Crowing? I exclaimed, injecting theatrical indignation into my voice. Brenda, that is not crowing. That is raw, untamed talent you're hearing. Luciano isn't making noise. He's singing. He has the passion of Caruso, the range of Pavarotti. He's expressing his artistic soul. Singing? Brenda sounded utterly bewildered. Kevin, it sounds like a rooster. To the untrained ear, perhaps, I retorted loftily. But he has incredible power, remarkable breath control, a truly unique vibrato. You wouldn't find Yo-Yo Ma for practicing his cello, would you? Luciano is an artist. I hung up, a slow, mad grin spreading across my face. Singing? The excuse was so ludicrous, so transparently absurd. It was perfect. If they wanted to complain about noise, I'd reframe the noise as art. And art needed an audience. Art needed validation. Thus began the training regimen, which mostly consisted of me playing opera CDs near Luciano's coop. He seemed partial to Nessun Dorma, or at least he crowed particularly loudly during the climax, and trying vainly to get him to crow on command using mealworms as bait. Spoiler. Roosters don't really work on cue. I timed his natural crowing sessions, noting his preferred performance times, dawn, noon, whenever Henderson started his lawnmower. I couldn't control the art, but maybe, just maybe, I could present it. Finding a venue for a singing rooster wasn't easy. I scoured local listings. Open mic nights at coffee shops seemed unlikely to appreciate Luciano's particular brand of performance art. Finally, I found it. The Pleasant Valley Annual Community Talent Showcase, held at the high school auditorium. Entry fee, $10. Maximum act length, 3 minutes. Perfect. Walking up to the sign-up table in the school lobby felt surreal. A bored-looking teenager sat behind it, chewing gum. Act name? She mumbled, not looking up. Luciano Pavor, Rooster, I announced grandly. She paused her chewing. Come again? Luciano, Pavor, Rooster. Okay, she typed slowly. And talent? Operatic avian vocals. She stopped typing, stared at me, stared at the carrier I held from which Luciano emitted a low, questioning rumble. Is there, like, a person singing with the rooster? No, I said proudly. Luciano is a solo artist." She sighed heavily, the sigh of someone paid minimum wage to deal with maximum weirdness. "Fine, whatever. 3 minutes. Don't make a mess. You're number 12 after the tap-dancing triplets." Backstage was a nightmare. Luciano, protesting his confinement in the carrier, was not making friends. He was wedged between the aforementioned tap-dancing triplets, all sequins and nervous energy, and a unicycling juggler practicing dangerously close by. The air hung thick with hairspray, anxiety, and the faint but distinct odor of agitated Rooster. "Is that chicken?" one of the triplets whispered, pointing at the carrier. "He's not a chicken," I corrected sternly. "He's a critically acclaimed vocalist." The juggler snorted. "Hope he doesn't lay an egg on stage, pal." Finally, our turn came. The previous act, a kid murdering Let It Go on the recorder, received pity applause. The MC announced, "And now, giving us some operatic avian vocals. Please welcome Luciano Pavor Rooster." I carried Luciano, perched regally, or so I imagined, on a velvet cushion I'd brought, onto the stage. The spotlight hit us. An awkward silence fell over the auditorium. I cleared my throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, trying to channel my inner P.T. Barnum. "Prepare yourselves for a unique auditory experience. Tonight, Luciano will share with you his passion, his pain, his primal song." I placed the cushion center stage, stepped back dramatically, and prayed Luciano felt inspired. For a moment, nothing happened. Luciano just blinked in the spotlight. Then, perhaps startled by a cough from the audience, or maybe just feeling the muse strike, he puffed out his chest, stretched his neck, and let loose. It echoed through the auditorium, loud, raw, undeniably Rooster. He followed it with another and another, each slightly different, a chaotic, ear-splitting symphony. The audience reaction was mixed. Stunned silence gave way to nervous giggles, then outright laughter. Some people looked confused. A baby started crying in the back. After about 90 seconds of non-stop crowing, Luciano abruptly stopped, ruffled his feathers, and pecked at the cushion. I strode forward. "Thank you," I announced to the bewildered crowd, scooping Luciano up. We exited stage left to a smattering of confused applause and quite a lot of laughter. The judges, a local councilwoman, the high school drama teacher, and someone from the Parks and Rec department, looked utterly shell-shocked. They conferred, whispering furiously. When the awards were announced later, Luciano didn't win Best Vocalist, but he did receive a hastily created ribbon for Most Memorable Performance. I accepted it with dignity. The next morning, nursing coffee and basking in the glow of Luciano's memorable debut, there was a sharp rap at the door. Not the HOA this time. A uniformed police officer stood on my porch, looking unimpressed. "Sir," he began, his voice devoid of amusement, "we've received multiple noise complaints regarding rooster crowing originating from this address, particularly in the early morning hours." "Officer, good morning," I said brightly. "You must mean Luciano. He's my performing rooster. He was just doing his vocal warm-ups, essential for maintaining his instrument." The officer's eyebrow twitched. "His instrument. Sir, Pleasant Valley. Noise Ordinance 9B prohibits excessive noise, generally measured above 60 decibels at the property line, between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., regardless of perceived artistic merit." "But officer," I protested, "Luciano isn't livestock. I have proof." I brandished the Most Memorable Performance ribbon. "He's a registered performing artist. Surely artistic expression is protected?" The officer sighed, a sound that spoke volumes about his shift. "Sir, your rooster's artistic expression is waking people up at 5 a.m. Keep the noise down during prohibited hours. Documented, verified violations will result in fines. Whether he's livestock or Liberace is an issue for your HOA or possibly animal control if specific welfare or nuisance statutes are met. But right now, focus on the noise ordinance." He tipped his hat and left. Okay. Noise ordinance was a potential problem, but he hadn't confiscated Luciano. And he'd inadvertently given me ammo against the HOA's livestock argument. Time for round 2. The County Fair Pet Talent Show beckoned. Stan, my neighbor from across the street who found the entire situation utterly hilarious, offered to film this time. The fair was louder, more chaotic. Luciano seemed agitated by the nearby prize-winning pigs and the screams from the midway rides. When his turn came on the small outdoor stage, he delivered a frantic, almost punk rock rendition of his usual repertoire. He didn't just crow, he screamed. He won second place in the exotic pet talent category. The winner was a parrot that could recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Fair enough. But Stan's video was gold. Stan, bless his heart, posted the video on his Facebook page. "My neighbor's rooster, Luciano, bringing down the house at the county fair." Within 48 hours, it had been shared hundreds of times locally. Someone added opera music over the crowing. The local news website did a short, mocking blog post. "Cock-a-doodle-doo or cock-a-doodle-diva, local rooster's talent ruffles feathers." Luciano was, briefly, a minor local internet sensation. The HOA reaction was swift and apoplectic. The viral video, the news mention, it was proof I wasn't just keeping a rooster. I was flaunting it. An emergency meeting notice was practically hammered to my door. Agenda: urgent action required. Violations pertaining to performing livestock, noise nuisance, zoning infractions, unauthorized performance venue, and conduct detrimental to community image. Property: 112 Harmony Lane. They were throwing the whole book at me. A thick packet arrived via certified mail from the HOA's lawyers. It contained demands for Luciano's immediate removal, threats of lawsuits seeking damages for diminished property values and emotional distress, presumably Mrs. Kravitz's, and astronomical fines for every conceivable violation, real or imagined. I considered my options. Option A, cave, get rid of Luciano, admit defeat. Option B, escalate further. Was there a state fair competition? America's Got Talent auditions? I decided on option C, attend the HOA meeting and face the music armed with Luciano's ribbon, his press clippings, okay, one blog post, and a truly spectacular level of righteous indignation. The meeting was even more tense than the first one about the hens. Mrs. Kravitz presented a slideshow documenting Luciano's reign of terror, complete with estimated decibel readings based on a smartphone app and blurry photos of me coaching him near the coop. "He's not just violating the livestock rule," she declared. "He's violating noise ordinances. He's attracting undue attention. He's turned his backyard into a performance stage." I stood up. "Members of the board," I began, holding up Luciano's second-place ribbon. "This is not livestock. This is Luciano Pavor Rooster, an award-winning performing artist recognized at the county level. His noise, as Mrs. Kravitz calls it, is his art. His fans," I gestured vaguely, implying legions, "find it inspiring. Are you going to silence art? Are you going to censor expression?" "It's a rooster, Kevin," the president snapped, his beige facade finally cracking. "It wakes people up. It's loud. It has to go." "On what specific grounds?" I challenged. "The noise ordinance. Police-confirmed daytime practice is acceptable. The livestock rule? His documented performance career suggests artist, not livestock. Zoning? It's my backyard, not a ticketed venue." The argument raged. People yelled. Bylaws were waved like weapons. Just as it reached peak absurdity, Stan, who had come for support entertainment, loudly whispered to me, "You should register him as an emotional support animal, Kev. They can't ban those." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at me. The idea was so monumentally, breathtakingly stupid. It was almost genius. Could I? An emotional support rooster? The board looked horrified at the very thought. Before they could officially vote to sue me into oblivion, however, fate intervened in the form of animal control, likely called by Kravitz mid-meeting. 2 officers stood at the clubhouse door. "We've had a series of escalating complaints about a rooster at 112 Harmony Lane," the senior officer stated, looking around the tense room. "We need to assess the situation regarding potential nuisance animal ordinances." This was serious. This wasn't just noise. This was about potentially removing Luciano by force of law, not just HOA rules. The showdown moved to my backyard. The animal control officers, the HOA board, Mrs. Kravitz, me, and Stan all stood around Luciano's coop. Luciano, sensing the tension, or maybe just because it was Tuesday, remained stubbornly silent. "We need to evaluate if the animal constitutes a public nuisance under Town Ordinance 14C, the officer explained. "This involves frequency, duration, and volume of noise, particularly during restricted hours, and impact on neighbors' reasonable enjoyment of their property." Mrs. Kravitz immediately launched into her tirade. The HOA president presented his file of complaints. I countered, presenting Luciano's performance schedule, that is, when he usually crowed, arguing it was primarily during permitted daytime hours, and offered Stan's video as proof of his artistic, rather than nuisance, intent. The officers listened patiently. They measured the distance to neighbors' windows. They looked at Luciano, still silent in his coop. "Okay," the senior officer finally said. "Based on what we have right now, without verified decibel readings during restricted hours, or observing continuous nuisance behavior at this moment, we don't have grounds to declare the animal a nuisance under 14C or seize it. However," he fixed me with a stern look, "the volume of complaints is significant. We strongly advise you to mitigate the noise, especially early morning. Further verified violations of the town noise ordinance will result in citations and could escalate the nuisance case. This is your final warning on that front." He then turned to the HOA board. "As for your bylaws regarding livestock, that remains a civil matter for the HOA to enforce through your own procedures. Animal control doesn't enforce HOA rules." They left. It wasn't a total victory, but it wasn't defeat either. Luciano wasn't evicted, yet. But the warning was clear. The constant crowing during prohibited hours had to stop. Artistic merit be damned. And the HOA, while unable to use animal control as their enforcer today, was clearly preparing for a full legal assault. The viral fame had also died down. The competition circuit felt unsustainable. I looked at Luciano, who finally decided to let out a half-hearted crow, as if sensing the drama was over. The fight was becoming more exhausting than funny. Maybe it was time for Luciano's final curtain call. A few weeks later, Luciano went to live on the same lovely farm upstate as Henrietta, Beatrice, and Clucky. I explained to the family that he was a sensitive artist who needed wide-open spaces and fewer judgmental neighbors. They just nodded politely. "I think he's happier there, honestly. Probably lords it over all the other chickens." Life in Pleasant Valley Estates returned to its usual beige calm. Mrs. Kravitz still eyes me suspiciously, but she hasn't filed any new complaints. Henderson's beagle still barks. The garage band still butchers classic rock anthems. My backyard is quiet. Too quiet sometimes. The HOA eventually sent me a bill for the legal fees they incurred investigating the Rooster situation. I sent them back a framed copy of Luciano's second-place ribbon and a note suggesting they auction it off to cover the costs. I haven't heard back on that yet, so did I win? I don't know, I lost my hens. I spent a ridiculous amount of time and energy on a Rooster's fictional singing career. But I didn't cave immediately. I fought back with absurdity. I made the HOA look ridiculous, not just to me, but briefly, to the whole county. And I have a killer story to tell. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, I almost think I can hear a faint, defiant scream echoing from upstate. Or maybe that's just the ringing in my ears left over from Luciano's final performance. Either way, one thing's for sure. Nobody in Pleasant Valley Estates will ever look at poultry quite the same way again. And they haven't said a peep about my slightly too tall sunflowers. Small victories,